Rowley Flynn, trance medium, trance healer, tutor, trainer. I mean, the list just goes on. Wonderful to have you here. Could you just introduce yourself to people, please, Jo?
Well, hello everyone. Lovely to see you all. As Joanna said, my name is Jo Rowley Flynn. I'm a spiritualist trance medium and tutor. My passion is very much within exploring the altered states with the spirit world, exploring that deeper connection of that blending and how we can develop that much more stronger bond with the spirit world. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to sharing whatever I can and answering questions for you. So thank you, everyone.
Could you explain what trance is, please, Jo?
If we look back in mediumship itself, it goes way, way back. We have evidential mediumship, which is really exploring that communication of your loved one in the spirit world. It's bringing that contact. It's bringing evidence, you see, that they still survive the physical death. So we know that we have that wonderful exploration of evidential mediumship. But where trance comes into it is the medium is learning to move into an altered state of consciousness. Their eyes are usually closed, and what's happening, you see, is the spirit intelligence, the spirit communicator, is coming forward to blend with that medium's mind, with that medium's auric field and the soul. And as they start to blend and surrender, because with trance, it's all about that surrendering of consciousness. What happens is the spirit communicator starts to have more control over that aspect of the consciousness. They're able to then speak through the medium. They're able to then address what they want to share, what they want to give. And so with trance mediumship, it's beautiful, because often we have philosophy, often we will have guides in the spirit world that will work with their mediums. If you look back at our pioneers, Mr. Gordon Higginson, Estelle Roberts, Ivy Northridge, all of these fantastic pioneers that we've had within spiritualism, they all really moved themselves into the trance states, and their guide would come and speak to the congregation. They would come and deliver these beautiful philosophical addresses. And so trance, it's hard to describe it in basic terms because it's very vast, but it really is about the closeness of the other world, coming as close as they possibly can, letting you know that they can come into this world that we are within and create an experience for you to very much have that closer contact with the other world. Usually when you sit with a trance medium, the energy in the room will change. You'll start to feel that closer contact with the spirit world. So it creates that purpose, you see. It brings the spirit world closer to this world. It also enhances all of our other mediumistic abilities. And that's what's incredible about the trance energy, that as you sit within it, it starts to enhance all these other faculties. So there's also the personal aspect to trance as well. I could go on, but in simplistic terms, it very much is surrendering your mind to the intelligence of those that work with you from the spirit side of life, allowing them to communicate and share and give what is necessary within that moment. So it can be quite healing.
Well, thank you, Joe. You explained it beautifully.
Could you explain, because I do practice trance, and I've been doing it for several years now with Judith Seaman. I would just like a deeper explanation, because I have had experiences where I hear myself speak. I have had times when I've been told I've spoken but didn't ever know I spoke. Yes. And I don't know, they're not like you have to graduate one from another. I guess they have different purposes. And total trance, I don't know if I've been there, because you practice by yourself. She says to run a recorder. So there's a muddiness to kind of different experiences you can have along the way, I guess.
Yes, of course. Thank you for that lovely question, and for sharing that, because it's a very good one to really ask about. What you're referring to there is those different levels of consciousness. And so if we look at the very beginning of trance itself and the altered states of consciousness, we have those inspired states of speaking, where the spirit world is influencing the mind of the medium. They're being able to pass on through you what it is they want to get across. Within churches, that will be known as, in platform mediumship, doing the address, the philosophical address. That's often in that inspired state of spirit. Often the medium will be aware of certain thoughts passing through that level of their awareness. But as they start to move into that energy, it starts to become stronger, you see. And that's where they start to become perhaps less aware of the information that comes forward. And if we look at all of the aspects of the mediumistic states, your evidential mediumship starts in that way as well. You're aware to start with, and as you move into what we call the power, the spirit world takes over. And you move into what we really call entrancement. That's what I like to call it. And all aspects of mediumship are a state of entrancement, whether it's in that lighter state or whether it moves into the deeper states where you're not as aware. And so, yes, there are many different levels from the lighter. Then we have that medium level, which is very, I'm aware, but then I'm not aware, you see. And that's you surrendering and letting go. That's where the spirit world being able to influence your mind in a stronger way. So, I don't like to put things into boxes, because otherwise we'll sit there, you see, and we'll go, am I there yet? Am I in this state yet? Am I there yet? Am I in this one? And actually, you're then just still in your conscious mind. If you look at it from the scientific point of view, you have the beta, which is your conscious states. You have the alpha, which is really that more relaxed altered state, where your mediumistic abilities will be exploring in the inspiration. Then trance happens more in that theta state. So that's more of that deeper relaxed. It's where you're not as aware. It's where you're moving out of the experience. And then delta is really those unconscious states. And actually, if we look at that for a second, the unconscious states is really where a lot of our pioneers years and years ago, such as Alec Harris, you may have heard of him, wonderful materialization medium, they would be totally out of it. But that was developing more of the physical. But we have had mediums of the past that have been so out of it. And it's been a much stronger and deeper state of mediumship with their trance. So there are various different levels. And I say that really the more natural we are with it, you're going to find with those brainwaves that you will be going up and down and in different awarenesses with that. So I would say the more you sit and work on your blending and work on that surrendering, the stronger that altered state will become with the spirit world. The more you relax with it, the more you'll start to go through those different levels of consciousness. And actually where we want to get with trance is to that level where perhaps we are aware to start with, but then all of a sudden we're not as aware. And that's a good place to be, you see. So that would be my explanation of it. Everybody's going to have different explanations of it. But I would say the more we can keep it simple and recognize more about the information that's passing through you, that is what's important, because it's about proving the intelligence, that there is a separate intelligence that's working through you with your trance. So the stronger that knowledge is, the more you come back and listen to that recording and you're not as aware of that information, or you think that's really inspired me, then you know that you're touching those deeper levels. Okay, I hope that helps for now.
Just to add on to that then, I often have an experience. We sit for 45 to 50 minutes the whole time. I know that I'm not there because the time has passed in a blink. I don't necessarily speak, but many of us in the group, we will still have gotten messages, visions, whatever you want to call them. So is there a technical line between having to speak to call it trance, or what is all the rest of the stuff? Because we're still getting messages, we're still getting knowledge, sometimes a sense of healing. So what is what, because there's such a thing as trance healing too. I'm going off topic now for a minute, but like, is that typical of many people to, I don't know, is that like a beginning phase before? Or is that trance too, when you are receiving messages, inspiration, visions, a whole bunch of things?
Yes, you're receiving that inspired state, I would say. So as you're sitting, what it sounds to me as though you're sitting to work on that blending with the spirit world, just sitting just to see what unfolds. But like you said, it's then allowing the spirit world to direct it where it wants to go. So it may be through the trance healing may start to happen. It may be messages. You may be aware of your guide wanting to pass on a message through the mind. But in order to move it into more of the trance speaking, which we call trance communication, that's where they would be taking over. There would be what we call this taking over, more of this overshadowing, more of this blending, and then them wanting to speak to the group. So that's where it will start to move into more of that deeper trance. But I would say the other level is more of that blending. It's more where you're sitting as a group, you're understanding how the spirit world are influencing your mind. And so that is still within the altered states, but I would say it's more in that inspired aspect. And so it would move from that inspired aspect and receiving messages. And then, right now, let's see if we can surrender and build that trust and start to take it deeper. If you're sitting in a circle with the same people, you're going to develop that trust between yourself, the friends that have gathered, but also in the spirit world, you've got your team, you've got your guides, but then you've got everybody else's as well. So it would make sense, wouldn't it, that they come together to work together. And it's been known where, let's say we've had two people that have sat together and the guides will swap, you see, to build that trust within the trance states. So there's many different experiences that can start to unfold. And it would make sense, wouldn't it? Because the spirit world want to try their best to get their world across to us. So the guides working together would really make sense as one team, especially if you're developing on a regular basis. And I always say within classes, as we are sitting to talk and discuss, I do feel that all of your guides are also discussing and talking, how can we communicate with this world? Because it's very different for them, isn't it? You know, we've got to raise our energy and get our energy in a good receptive state, but they've got to work in a completely different way. So yeah, it would make sense really, of the guides coming together, especially if you're working regularly together.
Yes. Could you explain a little bit about your guides and the relationship that you have with them?
Yes, you see, guides itself, everybody has different experiences, and we can only really talk on our own experiences. I can only really speak on my own personal journey. I've had quite some profound experiences with some of my helpers in the spirit side of life. And I very much like to look at it from that old school way of they are friends, they are family. And people that I've come across in my own life, when I've heard stories of there being a family that was very mediumistic, it was a very natural thing that the guides were just there to support, to help the family. So that in itself, for me, has always been a very personal experience. They're there to help. And that relationship with my own helpers and guides, it's been a journey. At times I probably drove them mad, where I haven't listened enough, where we have that doubtful mind. And I'm sure a lot of you would understand that when you're getting to know who it is that's there, when you're trying to understand that there is a separate intelligence working with you here. Well, you know, prove it to me. You want to know, you want to understand how that feels. So I was a bit of a nightmare to start with, because I didn't believe in the experiences I was having. Even though when I first went into trance, I was 16 and I was getting to know my main helper in circle, feeling that blending, feeling that something was going on, and I was sitting in an evidential mediumship circle, and I just kept going quite deep. And then one day, the guide then spoke through me, and I thought, what on earth's happened there? And the teacher said, it's okay, just come back slowly. Well, that was it. I didn't want to really do it. I thought, no, I don't know what that's all about. But they kept continuously coming back until I started to awaken to that role, to that purpose of what they wanted me to understand, which actually was to heal myself, was to actually look at myself more. And a lot of your guides that work with you, it's not just about proving that they are a separate intelligence, that they exist in the spirit world. They're also there to guide you. They're there to help you understand that own inner light within yourself, your own soul, your own spirit. So my own relationship with the guides, you know, has been incredible. There's been so many different stories where I've had experiences where I've sat with them, and then I've had other mediums that have given me that evidence of them. And I've had some physical phenomena experiences as well, which are very, very personal to my heart, which really at the time did shake me up a bit, because I started to recognize that wake-up call of how strong and how intimate that relationship is with those that walk with us. And so they're there. Gordon, for instance, he knew all of his guides. They were family to him. They were his friends. And there was a wonderful story, if you don't mind me just sharing, everybody, where he wasn't very well when he was younger. And he had a child guide that worked with him. And it came up to an exam. And you may have heard this in his book, or you may have heard him talk about this in lectures. And he wasn't very well, so he wasn't at school. And anyway, he went back to school. He had to sit for this exam. And his guide went and looked around to where the teacher was, looked at all of the answers that were there, and told him everything to write down. So started to write it all down. Of course, it got him into trouble. And his mum came up. His mum was a medium, Miss Fanny Higginson. And the head teacher said, we don't understand this. He's not been here, but he's got every single answer right. And she knew exactly what that was, that it was the guide giving him the information. But doesn't that just show the intelligence, you know? And we've had some remarkable mediums that have just had such this natural ability. And when he worked when he was in the war, his other guide, Paddy, who was an Irish gentleman, would be telling the troops, you need to go to the left because there's going to be a bomb that's going to come down this side. And some of them didn't listen to Gordon. But that shows, as they started to go that way, the bomb hit that way. And so it just goes to show how much trust do we have in the other world. And that it just inspires me. And I just feel guided to share that with you all. And you've probably heard that story before, but some of you may have not heard that. But I just think we can learn so much from that. So guides itself, it should become a natural process, but it should also prove the intelligence of them and the evidence of them. It's hard to describe our own experiences, but they're very dear to our hearts. And I'm sure, you know, as spiritualists, we've had many experiences that we won't forget, you see, that proves that intelligence of spirit.
Just in case anyone's interested, Joe is talking about someone called Gordon Higginson, who's a very famous British, well, he did everything, didn't he? Trance,
Absolutely.
evidential, healing. Tell us a little bit about the trance healing that you teach.
Yes.
And I understand
Yes.
as well that you've got a course coming up called, is it Sekem or Shekem?
Yeah, Sekem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
I've never heard. I've heard of Shekem, but I've
Yes.
never heard of that in terms of trance healing.
Yes. Yes. Okay, I will explain all. So trance healing, let's just start there. You know, we have normal healing modalities, don't we, where we are connecting to that healing universal energy and it's flowing through us. We're becoming that vessel for that healing power. But with trance healing, it's really taken it to that next stage where we're allowing the intelligence of the spirit world to gather close, to really blend with that energy. They start to take over with it, you see. So it becomes them doing the healing and not really us, you see. And it should never really be us, because otherwise we move into more of that magnetic healing where it's coming from your own energy. So we have, you know, that universal energy coming down, the blending of that. And then we have these deeper states of trance where, again, we move into what we call that entranced state. And it's really the guide that's blending in a deeper way with the medium to come and explore. And again, if you look back, a lot of the old mediums had a lot of spirit doctors that would work with them. And they would actually speak through the medium and they would give some very profound information that in that medium's normal state, they wouldn't necessarily know. So they would be able to do the healing and then tell them what's going on. And you know, in the past, we had a lot of trance healers that worked alongside doctors. And I find that fascinating, that the standard of trance healing was so strong, where again, they were probably going into those very deep altered states of consciousness to allow the spirit world to come forward and help. So it's a beautiful experience, trance healing, because you're completely going still. You're completely moving into that healing state, and you're really learning to surrender, to let the guide come forward and take over with that healing. And some people have had some really profound experiences with it, but it's a very simplistic development. I feel it is, because you're just learning to surrender. You're learning to just be in that beautiful healing energy, and you're learning to build up that stronger power with the spirit world to allow the healing to go where it's needed and to allow the spirit world to do what they can do. So if we create the right conditions, it allows the spirit world to be able to come in and take it to where they want to. So that really is trance healing, and I love it. I think it's just a beautiful form of healing itself. I like to combine and look at different traditions, because I feel that we can learn so much from other cultures and other traditions, spiritual traditions. And khcribb, the program that I've just created, comes from Egypt, and it's called khcribb. And khcribb is that higher vibrational frequency that in Egypt years and years ago, they very much would use this type of healing energy within the healing temples, within the pyramids. And so through that, the priests and the priestesses would very much feel that connection to the star system, to the sun, and they worked with the elements, you see. And so this khcribb power, it's quite a fiery energy to it. It's got quite a hot and fiery energy, but it's a much higher universal energy that flows down. But the interesting thing about it is you're connecting to that higher universal power. You're also connecting to the earth power as well. And you're combining them both together. And it's just a really powerful experience. I would definitely go and recommend to go and have a khcribb healing session. But they're combining it together. And what it does is the energy itself, it works on all aspects, mind, physical, emotional, even spiritual, but it's a much higher frequency. It's using all of the elements coming together. And with this new program, what I've called it is Hermetic khcribb Trance Healing. And so the Hermetic side is working with some of the ancient rituals. So it's very much working with the crystals, with the stones. It's working with sacred instruments that they would have used back then. And to be honest, this has been something that's gone on for centuries. If you look at the African cultures, they very much would use the drum. They very much would use the shakers and different things to help release, to help heal. So the first part is about releasing. It's about letting go of what perhaps needs shifting. But what it's also doing is it's starting to empower the atmosphere around you. And it's starting to move you as a healer into an altered state. And then what we do, you see, is we start to blend that khcribb energy into the experience, which then allows you to move into that very relaxed state. And then we allow the spirit world to come in and those that work with you to come and blend with that energy. So it does feel quite a strong experience, that can come about with it. So it is different. It is, combining the Egyptian energy in with the trance states and bringing that together. But you see, the interesting thing is with trance, the spirit world need energy. They need that power, in order for them to come and step in and take over. So with all of that ritualistic aspect at the start, it's empowering. And a lot of these cultures knew that when they used to communicate with the spirit world, they wouldn't just go straight into it. They would empower the energy to start with and then move into the experience. So that just gives you a little bit into what it is.
Wow, that's fascinating. And will you be attuning people?
Yes, absolutely. So we will, the way that it happens is you'll have a ceremony, a healing ceremony, and it will very much be combining and creating and holding that space for you to be able to blend into that energy, to become aware of it, to understand how it feels. So yes. Yeah, there will be that will come to it as well.
Joe. Laurie?
Is you're enhancing or conjuring and building an energy to get to that. Could you explain the word hermetic? How do you spell that and what does that mean?
Kemetic. The Egyptian land years ago, it was originally called Kemet. So that the Kemetic aspect is very much using the tools, using the stones. They would often bring in prayer and mantras, and it's all about the changing of that. It's nothing new, really. It's something that's always been there throughout history, but it's beautiful because we start to build and work with that energy in that way.
Joe, I wonder if you could give us some tips. I know it's a bit cheeky, but
Not at all.
I've trained with you, and I know how deep you go and how knowledgeable you are. And the personal development side of things as well was fantastic. I still struggle with, let's call it total surrender. And I do trust my guides, but it's myself that I sometimes don't trust.
Yes.
Give some tips just in case any of the others also experience this. And this could be for life, and it can apply to evidential, but specifically for trance.
Well, you see, with trance, you are learning to move into a vulnerable state, really, because you're learning to alter your state of consciousness. You're learning how to surrender. And at the same time, you've got all of the personal aspects of how you think and feel about that process. Some of you out there, you know, may have gone through some difficult experiences throughout your life that are to do with letting go and having to stay in control, you know? And essentially, one thing that we must recognize with trance is that you are always in control. The more that we can understand that there is that respect and boundary between the spirit world and yourself, they're not going to cross that. They're not just going to all of a sudden just take you too deep if you don't feel ready for that. So I think first of all, we need to release that myth, you know, that, oh, I'm going to go too deep. There can be a lot of fear that can be associated with the trance states, a lot of myths out there. And so it's a very beautiful, loving experience. And anything that's opposite to that, I would say, is coming from an aspect within you, that's where the personal development comes into it. So then, you know, we spend an awful lot of time having to look at that. So if I had somebody come to me and they're wanting to explore trance in the altered states, and they've got a real big fear about, oh, what if they come too close, or I can't surrender enough, I would go completely back to the beginning. Let's start with the mind, everybody, because your mind needs to be aligned with the spirit world. It needs to go through that process of feeling comfortable, of feeling loved, of also recognizing that you feel safe and feel okay. So that's why we go through those meditative states, because there's no point going to the spirit world and going into the blending if you can't possibly just sit and feel comfortable moving into a relaxed state of consciousness. So it's first of all looking at you. And that would be my guidance, really, my advice to you, is if you have any of those type of experiences coming up within you, where do you most feel love within you? Where do you recognize love in awareness? Because your mediumship and any aspects that we have to do with the mediumistic states is all about where you're placing your awareness, because your thoughts are energy, you see. So where your thoughts go is where your experience starts to go, is where the energy starts to be created. So we've got to recognize the importance of self-development, the simplicity of the breath, and just creating that lovely space within where you can start to build your own sense of your spirit, your soul. Because, as Gordon said, if you can't touch that power within you and feel it, how can we possibly touch and feel the spirit world? So it's got to be the spiritualization of you first of all. And I can't get that across enough, that if we don't put that time in, it becomes very difficult. We end up rushing with our development. And so the spirit world will only really be able to come as close as really you're allowing them to. So it's all about the healing within the soul. And the more that you can learn to be at one with the soul, the more you can learn to calm your mind and learn the art of concentration and focus. That would be another thing, because if you can't focus and calm the conscious mind, it's going to be very difficult for the spirit world to come and blend, you see, to be able to get their presence across to you. So everything comes back to the nature of the mind. And that is where I would say start there. Don't go straight to the spirit world. Start with you. Understand how to get you clear. Understand how to get your mental awareness into a very softer experience. And then you'll start to move into that power. You'll start to recognize how that feels. You've got to understand how your own spirit feels. You've got to understand how to create that space, your energy, your power. Because then, once you learn how to do that, you're halfway there with the surrendering. Because you've learned how to feel comfortable, how to feel calm. And then anything that steps into your space, which is your guide, you'll start to feel a change with that. You'll start to recognize the difference with how that feels. So I could go on and on because there's so many different things, but that would be one of the things, and that comes under personal development. The other thing that I would very much say that is important with trance is getting to know who works with you. Understand how the presence and the power of your guide feels as they come close, because that will help you to understand how you are aware of that separate intelligence starting to blend with you. So that is important, okay? Because, you wouldn't go and meet, if we look at it in this way, I always say about this, you wouldn't go and meet a stranger for a coffee, would you? You wouldn't trust them as much, would you? You'd be a bit hesitant. So what I mean by that is you would get to know them. You would meet them several times. You would build that bond up. And then you see it connects stronger. And that's the exact same with your guides. It's the exact same with getting to know those that walk with you from the spirit side of life. And that really is about dedication. It's about sitting, working on your blending, and just recognizing how you can move into that altered state, how it works for you, because we're all different, and then starting to just ask the guide to come close and start to be aware of how your perception changes within that altered state. How do you recognize when they are there? Starting to build that bond, and then the trust will build. And as the trust starts to build, you start to surrender more. And as you learn and recognize that actually this isn't coming from my own imagination, this is somebody separate, then it will start to surrender more, because you're trusting more. You're trusting, you're letting go. You're allowing them to come and blend in a stronger way. So it takes a long time, really does. It's not, in 1 week, that's it, it's all done and dusted. It really is a foundation that you need to learn to grow. And that's why our pioneers of the past, they sat for many years just sitting in the silence to understand them before they then started to feel who was with them.
We all live in this really fast-paced world.
We do.
And I know in my mind sometimes, it's like multitasking. But then, with the right guidance and the right teacher, you do learn to have that sacred space for yourself.
But am I holding that back? Is there something that I'm doing there? And then how can I start to change that? What can I start to do? Because you see, I could say to you, do this and do this, but essentially we've got to reflect. We've got to be reflective in what is it that's going on there. And if you have others that you sit with, we need people that can be very caring and supportive, that can sit for us, but also people that can be honest from the heart and can also assess and feel what's happening, what's going on. So without me really seeing what's happening, you see, what I would suggest is really sitting with a teacher who can assess and see, well, what's happening, what's going on here. Is there an aspect of the conscious mind that's getting in the way? Sitting with others that also have that ability to be able to sense and feel. But I would say that you've just got to keep gently moving forward with it. Just allow the experience to be as it needs to be, okay? If they want to continue, then they will. Then I would move back to the breath. I would move back to that blending, and it's all about that surrendering. The breath is the key. Relaxation is the key, because as the guide starts to blend with you, it's going to naturally make you more aware, because they're starting to use this area. But then you just need to relax into it. And, if you feel that it stops, go back again. Just build that blending. Just allow yourself to move back to the breath. Understand how that blending works with the guide coming close, and just build it up gently. Guides themselves, yes, they may have lived many lives, not all of them. One of them may have only had one incarnation on the earth, but usually they are a much higher intelligence, and they have a specialist requirement of working with that individual for a certain reason, for a certain purpose. Yes, I do believe we can get far too caught up on what's your name? Is it Billy? Is it Ted? Is it, who is it? And I think that's us trying to humanize that part of the spirit. If they want to reveal, who they were when they were here, then I think that would be a natural thing. Some mediums have, had that evidence, and that's wonderful. They've been given that because perhaps that medium either needed it or they particularly wanted to. But I think as well, if we look at people such as Leslie Flynn, and I'm going to talk about physical mediumship here, that's where it becomes even more real, because not only did he have a London gentleman, a London boy with a Cockney accent that worked with him, but he also had this remarkable ability to sit within the dark, and the guide's voice would start to talk back to him in the air, and he would just talk to him. And that is just incredible. And not only did it go that far, but he also had the ability to hold seances in London and various other places, and went round many spiritualist churches over the years and proved the survival of the physical existing with the spirit world through loved ones coming back and speaking to their loved one. But also mediums sitting in that congregation and their guide all of a sudden talking to them and having that real experience. And if we look at people like Alec Harris, materialization medium, mediums that were developing their relationship with their guide and understanding who it was, they would then materialize out of the cabinet and go over to them and hold their hands. And they would have these really moving experiences with their guides, which really showed that they were people, and that wanted to materialize in that way of how they would have been when they're here, you see. So I'm just saying that because I think there's going to be many different views on guides, and it's been something for centuries that's always been there. But what it ultimately comes down to is not about what they used to be, but what their purpose is with working with you now and being able to prove that they exist in the spirit world. And I think that essentially has got to come through within that mediumship. Within trance, we need to learn the importance of proving that evidence that they are a separate intelligence that may have lived here, live in the spirit world, are teachers, are guide, and have this knowledge, so much more knowledge and understanding that they wish to share for a purpose, for whatever it is that they can explore. It's more of the feeling of them. They will give what they need to give. If you look at Estelle Roberts, for instance, many years ago, she got so fed up and thought, you know what, I'm giving all of this up. I'm not going to sit anymore. I'm not going to, wait for something physical to happen. And as she went to walk out of the room, the table levitated and nudged her on the back, and out came the voice of her guide, Red Cloud, speaking in the air to her. And that was then the start of her journey. And so, I mean, it's hard to believe, isn't it? Can you imagine that happening to one of us, a table nudging us in the back? It's a very difficult thing to believe, but it's also inspiring. And it shows the intelligence, once again, of the spirit world. So, yeah, I think for some reason, I just want to say to some of you, just don't give up with that relationship of building your link with the spirit world. Understand that it will feel subtle. It's more about understanding what your energy is. And then when you sense that guide with you, it's a very personal connection. And you'll be given what it is that you need. But it's just focusing on building that contact and that relationship in your way and your experience. Because the journey is so personal. Spiritualism and our experiences is a very sacred but very personal experience as well.
Did you first notice that you were different?
So I first became aware of something, something strange, something odd happening, as we all do, don't we, as mediums? What's that? My grandfather transitioned to the spirit world when I was probably 8 years old. And I remember being in my room and feeling the presence of somebody. And I don't know how I knew it, but I just remember turning around and nobody was there. I instantly knew that it was my grandfather. And I remember going downstairs and talking to my mum and saying, as an 8-year-old boy, oh, I just felt somebody upstairs. I feel like it was Granddad. And of course, an 8-year-old boy saying that, my mother was thinking, that's very odd to come out with that. So that was my opening to it. And I never really sort of thought any more about it. And then I had another profound experience. There's been so many different experiences I've had, but that was the first time I was aware of spirit. Then when I was 12 years old, I then met 2 local mediums. I was having all these spiritual experiences, seeing colours around teachers at school and thinking, what on earth's that? Why am I seeing that? I had some very vivid experiences that actually was making me feel a bit strange, that what's going on with me. Yeah. And I happened to get introduced to well-known mediums around the area that my mum worked for. It just all of a sudden flowed and happened. And I felt that was spirit leading me to them. And I used to go around there every week. And I would sit with the lady and she would just guide me and tell me to sit, or she'd put something in my hand and say, what are you sensing? What are you feeling? Okay, this week we're going to do healing. And you can imagine, as a 12-year-old boy, I'm sitting there going, okay, well, what am I meant to do here? And so I'm very grateful for those days, because what I didn't realize is she was teaching me very slowly about mediumship. So yeah, it's always been there. First came aware when I was 8, but I would say the mediumship started really around 12, and then I started to sit from the age of 12. And then when I was 16, I sat in my first development circle, and then that's when the trance started to happen. So it's been an early journey for me, and I wouldn't change any of it. It feels, it's been what it's meant to have been.
Family were obviously very open and not, judgmental.
Yes.
What would you say to people that their families are maybe not as supportive? Some people feel like they have to hide away, don't they? There's like a shame.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, it's especially if you've had a very strict upbringing, if you had a very religious upbringing, that's very difficult, isn't it? But I would say, if anyone ever goes through that, it's I would go to a local spiritualist church if you can, and just ask for support and be around other spiritualists that understand you more. Because I think when you're having these experiences, sometimes our family don't really understand, do they, to the full extent of what we go through as mediums and spiritual awareness. So I think being around like-minded people is what I would suggest. And if you can find that, whether that's online or whether that's at a local church, I feel that will then help you in some way, you know. But I was quite fortunate that my mother was quite open to it. Because she was quite skeptical to start with, and then when I started getting messages from my grandfather, and then we'd go to the local church and the medium would say what I'd just given, then she was going, okay, something's going on here. So she slowly opened her awareness to it, whereas my father was quite skeptical and was like, oh, you shouldn't be getting involved with that, what's going on? But then that totally changed, because I used to go round to my father's and we would sit, and I would actually take him into sitting in the power and being able to sense his own connection. So I had some and he had some rather interesting experiences. So yeah, it's been really quite interesting. But that's what I would say. If you have got that going on, it is tough, but you need to just be around a supportive community that can guide you, and the spirit world will help with that. You know, it was the same with me. I didn't really know what was going on, and then there was those two mediums at that moment.
Yeah, they put things in our path, don't they?
They do. They absolutely do.
Yeah. Well, I found that really fascinating, really informative. And if there are no more questions, I just wonder if there's anything else you'd like to say, Joe, before we say goodbye.
Yes, well, you know, whenever we do these experiences of sharing, it's quite lovely, isn't it, to just all come together and to reflect upon our own connection with the spirit world, and to deeply reflect and look into expanding our mind to a greater understanding of this world and the next, really. So thank you for the opportunity. And it's lovely to see so many of you here and wanting to understand more of your growth with mediumship. It's an ever-growing journey. It absolutely is. One thing I would like to share, if you are interested, is we do have, I run Trance Mediumship Community. And we have an open day coming up on the 29th of August. It's on a Saturday. 29th of August, and we are running all free events, okay, from meditations to mini workshops, giving you an understanding into the trance states, demonstrations. We've also got some of our students that are going to be doing some fledgling trance readings. We're going to have one-to-one sit-ins. We're going to have an hour of evidential trance, heal, all different things. But I just wanted to share that quickly, because if you're interested,
it's online.
It's online. It is online. Yes, yeah, that will be online. Okay, it'll be a full day event, but it will be on our community group. But yeah, but thank you, everyone.
Wonderful.
It's been a pleasure to answer your questions, and I hope that it's helped in some way for you all.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you very, very much, Joe.
You're welcome.
Bye.